Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we're going to cover a topic about arguments. Now, have you heard of this before? What is your evidence? How is it that evidence relate with your conclusion? What is your point or your conclusion? What is it that you are trying to prove? And there's a blue face during critical discussion. Feel familiar? Okay, so today we are going to talk about forming arguments well, presented by Brother Shamsuddin Abdullah. And that is not me, definitely. Now, what is our target for today? When you hear a statement, you will know what kind of premise you can use. You are able to organize arguments step by step. You know the types of logic to support your points. Inshallah, so these are the three things of our target. Now let's go for the first one. Knowing what kind of premise to use. We want to know what types of conclusion that we are dealing with. Now, in order to do that, we need to know the types of conclusion. So there are two types of conclusion. The first one is facts, and the second one is opinion. Now, for facts, you want to actually use concrete evidence to support it. What do we mean by concrete? It means that evidence that can be perceived by the senses. You can see, you can hear, you can touch. Now for opinions, you use reason to support it. Now let's look at the difference here. Now concrete evidence. Concrete evidence are statements that can be measured through the senses, either right or wrong. For example, if you claim that Ali is 165 centimeter tall, now that one you can actually measure, then you can actually see the result happening. So in this case, you can actually say it is right or wrong. Now this is what we call concrete evidence. Now the second one is reasons. Reasons cannot be measured through the senses. It is very subjective. So it's not either right or wrong, it is either strong or weak. For example, you say that Ali is a tall student in class. Now when you say this is very subjective, because other people can say that no, Ali is actually not tall. So the issue here is not whether it is right or wrong. The issue is here whether which of the opinion is strong or weak. So when you have an opinion, you support it with reason. Now which type of conclusions are these? Let's have a little exercise here. The first one, Malaysia is one of the Southeast Asia country. The second one, Malaysia is the most well-known country among the ASEAN countries. Now take a guess which one is a fact, which one is an opinion. Now if let's say this, okay, let's examine the first one. Malaysia is one of the Southeast Asia country. If you know this is actually a factual statement. Now if it's a factual statement, what do you use? Concrete evidence. So you try to prove it by saying because it is observed in map that Malaysia is in the SEA region defined by the word. So when you use the word observe, that it shows that it is a fact that can be observed, or see is an evidence that you can actually see. So this is concrete evidence. Now the second one, as you have known, Malaysia is the most well-known country among the ASEAN countries, is an opinion. So you may use any kind of reason to actually support this opinion. So let's say this one, because many people know the Petronas Twin Tower and it is in Malaysia. So this is just an opinion supported by reason. This is subjective and anyone can actually just say that this is weak and have a better reason. Now let's try this again. Another two statements here. Julaini is the cleverest person in CFS, and number two, Julaini graduated with a 4 flat from CFS. Which one of this is a fact or an opinion? So let's try this. So the first one, Julaini is the cleverest person in CFS. What do you think? Is this a fact or opinion? Okay, yes, this is actually an opinion. So if it's an opinion, you may use reason to support this. For example, because he has been scoring A's for all his subject. So the premise is actually providing reason to support why you think that Julaini is the cleverest person in CFS. Now that's why another person can actually say, having a different reason, that Julaini is the cleverest person in CFS because he is active in sports as well as being in the dean's list. So this is another reason. Now, so the second one, Julaini graduated with a 4 flat from CFS. So this is a factual statement. Now, if it's a factual statement, you must provide a concrete evidence to show that Julaini graduated with a 4 flat CFS because it is written in his graduation transcript. So this is something that you can actually see written in his graduation transcript. Now, look at what happens if you use reason to support a fact. Now, if let's say Julaini graduated with a 4 flat from CFS and that is a factual statement, but you use reason to support this because he is active in sports as well as being in the Dean's List. Now here the premise only explain why you think that Julaini got 4 flat. It does not prove that Julaini got 4 flat. So this becomes a what? It becomes an explanation, which is a non-argument. Now, do you understand why I kept saying, what is your evidence? What is your evidence? What is your evidence? And then it makes you think, apa senak ni? Hopefully it doesn't become bored like that person. So because you're using reason to support a fact, and that is not an argument. Now, so have a recap. There are 2 types of conclusion, facts and opinion. So when you have a factual conclusion, you support it with concrete evidence. And if you have an opinion related conclusion, you support it with reason. Now let's go for the second one, organizing argument. We want to know how to build arguments step by step. So there are 3 steps. The first one is to understand the main issue. The second one is to determine what you are going to say or your point, whether it is a fact or an opinion, and further support the point with relevant reasons or evidence according to point number 2. Now let's say there's an example topic here. Is sugar more important than flour? So the first one is to understand the main issue. What is argued? What is not argued? Now in this topic, let's say a student say sugar is more important sugar is important because it is common source of glucose. Now this argument argues for sugar is important. This is irrelevant because that's not the main issue. Now the main issue, when we talk about is sugar more important than flour, you want to actually ask yourself, what have we already agreed? We've agreed that sugar and flour is important, so we are not debating or arguing about that. So what are we arguing? That sugar is more, capital M, more important than flour. What are we not arguing? That sugar is important or flour is important. We are not arguing that because we have agreed on that already. So the main issue is not to prove that sugar is important, but it is to prove that sugar is more important than flour. So let's say this would be a good argument. Sugar is more important than flour because human needs more glucose than carbohydrate, in which sugar contains glucose, whereby flour does not. So this argument argues for sugar is more important than flour. Now the second step is to determine what are you going to say. Is a fact or an opinion? So just now when you say that human needs more glucose than carbohydrate, that is a factual statement. So if it's a factual statement, you want to use concrete evidence. For example, according to a report by Dr. A, he said that humans need 70% of glucose, which is mostly found in sugar, and 30% of carbohydrate to produce energy. This suggests that human needs more sugar. So the full argument will be like this. You can read on your own. So at this point, you might be thinking, what are the ways that I can prove my point? Now it comes step number 3, the types of logic or premise that you can use. So here we want to know how many types of logic we can actually use. Now we're going to cover 5 types. Okay, the first one is inductive generalization. Second one is predictive argument. The third one is argument from authority. The fourth one is causal argument, and the fifth one is statistical argument. By the way, there are many more types of logic. These are just few. Do explore more. Inductive generalization. To simply put, it is a form of logic where you have a few samples and you make a generalization. For example, Ali consumes more sugar than carbohydrate. Anna consumes more sugar than carbohydrate. Ina consumes more sugar than carbohydrate. So this suggests that people consume more sugar than carbohydrate. So as you can see here, this is an inductive generalization. From specific cases, you actually give a general conclusion. So this will be useful if you want to prove a statement to be true or not by citing specific cases. Now the second one is predictive argument. It is a form of logic where you predict what will happen in the future. For example, drinking carbonated drink has caused many people to be diabetic. So probably when Ali drinks it, it will cause him to become diabetic as well. Now this will be useful if you want to prove something will lead to a good or bad outcome in the future. Now the third type is argument from authority. It is a form of logic where you use authority or witness that claims the statement is true. For example, a food scientist, Dr. A, claimed that the easiest way to get glucose is by consuming sugar. This will be useful if you want to prove a statement to be true or not by citing an authoritative figure. The fourth one is causal argument. It is a form of logic where you claim something is the cause of something else. For example, since he started to drink 2 cans of carbonated drinks every day for 6 months, he became diabetic. So here we are trying to prove that it's the carbonated drink that has caused him to be diabetic. This will be useful if you want to prove A is the cause of B. And the last one is statistical argument. It is a form of logic where you use statistical evidence to claim a probability of something. For example, 95% out of 100 people claim that they dislike eating bread. This suggests that bread is disliked by people generally. This will be useful if you want to suggest a point that cannot be proven by facts. Now let's take a recap here. Now that you know what kind of premise you can use depending on the types of conclusion. So there are 2 types of conclusion, factual and opinion. The second one is now you know how to organize argument, the 3 steps of it. And the third one is now you know the types of logic to support your points. There are 5 of it, the one that I've covered just now. Now as a bonus tip, few ways you could actually examine the topic. So when you have that topic, because I've already posted in Facebook, when you have that topic, these are the things that you might want to consider in examining the topic. The first one, definition of words. If let's say there's a word used is sugar, is more important than flour, for example, you might want to examine the definition of these words, like sugar, what does it mean? Flour, what does it mean? And more important, what does it mean? So you want to explore in terms of that. Now, the second one is you want to explore in terms of different contexts. You can use the PPT formula, the people, the place, and time. Now, what do I mean by this? So let's say you have an issue and you want to actually think about how does this issue affect other people? The first P, people. How does it affect Malaysians? How does it affect non-Malaysian? How does it affect Malays? How does it affect Christians? How does it affect the Muslim, for example? So different people that you want to examine that. The second P is to want to examine the issue in terms of the different places. For example, how is that issue taking place in Malaysia as compared to Brunei, or as compared to Singapore, as compared to other nations, right? Be it within Malaysia or outside Malaysia. So you can actually compare in terms of place. And the third one, T, time, means that you can actually compare in terms of different time frame. For example, how is this issue being addressed during Rasul's time? Alright, or during 20 years ago, or now, or how will we deal it when in the future, 10 years in the future, for example. So you can actually compare it in different contexts. Remember, P, T, people, place, and time. The third one that you want to examine when you have an issue is you want to examine in terms of different perspective. Here what I mean is, for example, you want to look at the issue in terms of psychological perspective, or sociological perspective, or political perspective, or historical perspective, or religious perspective. You may venture into that because they have different ways of viewing the issue. And then the last one would be to examine the issue in terms of what causes it and what will it bring effects to. So this is actually open a lot of things to explore the issue about. So these are 4 tips that you can use to explore the issue before you actually prepare for your argument. So thank you for viewing and listening. Hope this has helped you to be a better person when it comes to argumentation. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.